Hello everyone and welcome back to another Project Gladiator weather forecast. Today I'll be covering the weather for January 27th of 2023. This is going to be a little bit more of a daily forecast. It's going to give you the overall taste and feel for what a daily forecast is going to look like with how I have been editing my videos recently. Still going to stay kind of around the same because these kind of have to be made in a little bit more of a shorter period of time, so it doesn't really allow for a lot of editing. So it's going to be fairly similar to some of my other daily forecasts. May do a little bit of editing, but overall this is going to be a little bit for more of those a little bit more advanced folk in severe weather forecasting, but I will be providing tons of good information for the weather for today. So let's start off with the SPC outlook for today on the 27th. Currently we do have a slight risk for a lot of southeastern Alabama in the Florida Panhandle. I'm considering if that is really the best place for the slight risk region because it is being mainly driven by this 5% tornado risk with a fairly large 2% that does extend all the way into central and eastern Tennessee and even into central North Carolina with the possibility of a few tornadoes today with a classic cold core setup. But overall, I am kind of considering if that 5% tornado risk is going to be the best place, if it should be maybe a little bit more right here. And I will get into why that is later on in the forecast. We also do have a 15% damaging wind risk for the possibility of some scattered damaging wind gusts. With some of the storms that we may see today, and then also a 5% hail risk, mainly across central into eastern Tennessee. Taking a look at our WBC outlooks real quick so we can get an idea of the possibility for flash flooding across this region. We do have a slight risk for flash flooding for a lot of Virginia into northern Georgia. This is likely going to be associated with the first round of widespread rain showers that we had in a line that just plowed through a lot of the southeast and led to a lot of rainfall. So overall, that's probably going to be the main cause of that slight risk region. We shouldn't really see all that much of a flash flooding risk with some of the storms that we may see today behind that line of rainfall. And then for our winter weather outlooks for today, we don't really have anywhere that we are expected to see widespread heavy snowfall, but some isolated portions of the northwest there may be able to see some snowfall that may be greater than 4 inches. And then we can also take a look at our surface analysis real quick. This cold front is going to be the main thing that we're going to be watching for severe thunderstorms. This stationary front is likely going to push off to the north, possibly as far north as Kentucky, which is going to allow for some severe storms as far north as Tennessee and North Carolina. Taking a look at weather models, starting off with our 500 millibars like we usually do. The main thing that we are expected to be watching for as far as severe thunderstorms for today is going to be this fairly large long wave trough that has since moved out of the Rocky Mountains and is beginning to become negatively tilted. We are seeing a 500 millibar jet streak, which is going to become quite concerning, upwards of 100 miles per hour, which is going to be feeding into the exit region of the trough and enhancing quite a bit of shear across this region. As for the cold front, and the geometry of this trough, I'm going to push the frames forward a little bit because our cold front is around here as of right now. As of the time recording this, you can see that our isobars are suggesting the possibility of a little bit more of a semi-discrete mode along that cold front, so we may be able to see a line of some semi-discrete supercells along that cold front that we may have to watch for. And again, we should see quite a bit of shear come out of this, as well as we do have a fairly strong 500 millibar jet streak. Taking a look at our 700 millibar and our low-level jet, overall, we aren't really seeing anything too crazy as far as the 700 millibar and the low-level jet. We should see a low-level jet that may be able to get upwards of 50 to 60 miles per hour in strength. But overall, we aren't really expected to see too much power come out of the low-level jet, but it may increase as storms move into Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina. However, that is going to be when instability does decrease. So overall, we shouldn't really see too much of an increase with severe thunderstorm risk as that does move into some of the more eastern regions of today. But overall, the low-level jet is looking to be a little bit more on the weaker side, but should definitely help with quite a bit of shear across this region, especially in the exit region. Taking a look at pivotal weather real quick so we can get an idea of our 200 millibars and our upper level. Overall, we aren't really seeing a whole lot of defluence, which is what we're looking for. We're looking for the spreading in our isobars, which creates a little bit of a void in the upper levels of the atmosphere, and it will compensate with that void to by taking air from the mid levels and the upper levels, and it will rise upwards. That's how you get wide scale kinematic lift. But overall, we are seeing a little bit of defluence. Overall, we aren't really seeing a whole lot of spreading of those isobars, but it may be able to help quite a bit with severe thunderstorms, and we are seeing an upper level jet potentially upwards of 100 miles per hour, which should lead to some elongated photographs supporting the possibility of some hail in Tennessee region. Taking a look at our timing and when and where we should be able to see our thunderstorms for today. As of right now, they are currently developing along a cold front around Mississippi into Alabama. However, we are expected to see the main risk as they do move into central Alabama and into central Tennessee. Notice the discrete mode that I was talking about. The discrete mode where we do have a little bit more discrete supercells with potentially some isolated rain showers in between. And notice how we are seeing some fairly robust cells along this line. Some of them are less robust than others, and we may have to watch for some of these more robust cells for the possibility of tornadoes. But look at how well these storms are taking on prominent hooking features as they do move into the tornado risk region. So again, we are going to have to watch for the possibility of tornadoes for today. But as for the timing, we are expected to see storms develop along the cold front, move into western Alabama, and impact portions like Tuscaloosa around 4 p.m. today, and then move into Birmingham around 5 p.m. and impact central Tennessee, including the Nashville region, around 5 p.m. into 6 p.m. And then we should see some fairly robust cells as they do move into the Cumberland Plateau, into a little bit more middle eastern Tennessee around 7 p.m. tonight, and eastern Alabama around 7 p.m. tonight, and then into eastern Tennessee and into Georgia. It's a little bit more scattered, but potentially some robust cells may be possible scattered within that around 10 p.m. tonight for the possibility of a brief tornado or two, some damaging wind gusts, and maybe some hail. Taking a look at our storm relativity and the directional shear that we may have in place across this region, I'm going to move a few frames forward so we can really see what it may look like whenever storms become more so fully developed and more mature. You can see that we are seeing a lot of shear, especially in the northern region across Tennessee, which we are definitely going to have to watch for a little bit more of a better possibility of tornadoes potentially. I will get into why that is, but overall we are seeing some fairly better shear, definitely more so compared to further down south where we have directional storm relativity values upwards of 100 to 200, but then we get upwards of 300 in central Tennessee into eastern Tennessee. So that may be able to support a little bit more of better spin up and potentially a little bit more of a better risk for tornadoes further into Tennessee that we may have to watch for. But overall, our directional shear is looking fairly decent. Taking a look at our bulk shear, mainly our speed shear, what we are expected to see as far as elongated photographs across this region and the possibility for hail. We are seeing some fairly decent bulk shear values, upwards of 70 and 60 knots, but should definitely shear the updraft and separate the downdraft from the updraft, allowing for a little bit more severe thunderstorms across this region. And that should definitely elongate photographs quite a bit, leading to at least the possibility for some hail across a lot of the Tennessee region that we may have to watch for with some of those more robust storms across the Tennessee region. But overall, our speed shear is definitely looking fairly indicative of the possibility of some fairly sheared storms and some elongated photographs. Taking a look at our dew points, we're going to start taking a look at what the environment these severe thunderstorms are expected to be in, how that is expected to affect our severe thunderstorms. We are seeing fairly good dew points across this region, dew points upwards of the low to possibly the mid 60s across a lot of the Dixie states, and then potentially upwards of the low 60s and the 50s across a lot of Tennessee. It does get a little bit lower as we do go into Tennessee, however, we're going to have to mainly take a look at temperatures for that. But overall, our dew points are definitely looking fairly decent. Taking a look at our temperatures across this region and how it's going to affect our instability, we are seeing some fairly decent heating across this region. It is typical for the month of January, but we are seeing some fairly decent heat across this region. We are seeing temperatures that are going to be getting into the mid, potentially the upper 60s. Should definitely provide us with quite a bit of fairly decent instability across this region. Into Tennessee, we are going to see a little bit more less heating across this region, but it still will provide us with some instability with temperatures that may be able to get into the low 60s, potentially into the 50s, and then as that warm front as the cold front and the warm front includes as it moves into North Carolina, we shouldn't really see a whole lot of heat. Taking a look at our lapse rates and how that is going to affect our instability. Overall, we aren't really seeing a whole lot of lapse rates across this region. However, notice in Tennessee, we are seeing at least some lapse rates along our severe thunderstorms. Don't really take into account everything behind it, like the lapse rates that may be able to get up to the 8s, because that is going to be behind our severe thunderstorms and not really in the environment that is going to support our severe thunderstorms. But overall, we are expected to see at least some lapse rates in Tennessee and the northern Dixie states, which may be able to help with instability, but overall it may be fairly limited and may be a little bit more of a hindrance to storms, but should definitely help with instability, potentially help with updrafts as well. We can also take a look at what we are expected to see as far as convective inhibition and how that may overall help our storms, but may potentially make them a little bit weaker. Notice mainly across the main region, across the Dixie region, how we are expected to see quite a bit of a temperature inversion, quite a bit of convective inhibition, potentially an elevated mix layer that was introduced by the first round of rain showers, which is going to allow for instability to build underneath that cap until it is released by the cold front, prevent warm air from rising potential and making storms a little bit more explosive, potentially some more isolated storms a little bit more robust. But across Tennessee, we are seeing a little bit more of a compact, convective inhibition, which again should help with instability and may potentially help storms become a little bit more explosive. But it also may be a little bit more of a hindrance to storms. Culminating this all together, so if we can take a look at what the instability is expected to look like across this region, we are expected to see overall some fairly low and most unstable cape, which is typical with a cold core setup like this. We primarily look for surface instability, but 0 to 3 kilometer cape, as well as surface instability. And we don't really take a look at most unstable cape because it is fairly weak. As you can see, we are seeing most unstable cape that's going to be staying around the triple digits. Overall, isn't really going to be too much of a help with severe thunderstorms. But again, we will have to look at our 0 to 3 kilometer cape, but storms may be able to tap into this most unstable cape, but overall we will have to look at our 0 to 3 kilometer cape. Taking a look at our 0 to 3 kilometer cape, this is really where the risk for severe thunderstorms really shines, because this is a classic cold core event, and usually we don't have very strong most unstable cape, and we do have to take a look at our 0 to 3 kilometer cape. We are seeing a fairly decent 0 to 3 kilometer cape, upwards of 100 joules per kilograms, potentially upwards 140 joules per kilograms, and then we should also see that extend up into central and east, and potentially even into eastern Tennessee. However, as it does move into the Tennessee Valley, we are going to see significant decrease in the cape and a little bit more of a lower end tornado risk, but still the possibility for maybe a brief tornado or two with some of the more robust storms, as we do have quite a bit of 0 to 3 kilometer cape in place, and this should definitely be able to fuel our threat for severe thunderstorms across this region, the possibility for tornadoes, damaging wind gusts, and potentially even some hail further north. As of right now, I'm not really sure why it isn't showing it anymore. However, a lot of previous model runs were indicating a little bit better surface instability, or 0 to 3 kilometer cape further into Tennessee and into eastern Tennessee, which is indicating a little bit more a better risk for tornadoes. I'm not really sure why models aren't showing that anymore, but they were indicating a little bit more better 0 to 3 kilometer cape further to the north, which we again may have to watch for overall a better possibility of severe thunderstorms, because we may have a little bit better shear, even if our 0 to 3 kilometer cape isn't going to be greater than the rest of the environment further north. Taking a look at our surface instability and the instability at the surface, and see if our storms are going to be a little bit more elevated or potentially surface-based, you can see that we are seeing some fairly overall weak surface instability across this region. However, it is better than nothing. We are seeing at least some surface instability, which should mean that storms should be able to tap into that surface instability and become a little bit more surface-based. But overall, I'm not really too sure if it means that storms are going to be a little bit more elevated because we have weak surface instability, or if storms are going to be able to tap into the very little surface instability that we have and become surface-based. But regardless, we still have the possibility for tornadoes, and if it does happen into that surface instability at the surface level, we should be able to see the storms being mainly fueled by our 0 to 3 kilometer cape, and again be able to produce the possibility of a tornado across this region. Same with middle Tennessee. And then into Eastern Tennessee, it does get a little bit more weaker. Taking a look at our composite parameters, starting off with an energy helicity index values and what we may see across this region as far as the tornado risk. Energy helicity index values do not do very well with cold core setups because I'm pretty sure they primarily use most unstable cape, and most unstable cape is typically weak during cold core setups and primarily fueled by 0 to 3 kilometer cape. But you can see that we do have some spotty regions where energy helicity index does get upwards of 1. But overall, it is definitely very weak because it isn't taking into account the 0 to 3 kilometer cape. So that's why energy helicity index values aren't really the best and very indicative of what the realistic environment is going to be like in reality. Compared to what the models are indicating with most unstable cape. So we should see a little bit better tornado risk regardless of what energy helicity index values are showing. And notice how we do have a little bit more of a better risk into Middle Tennessee, as we do have a little bit better instability per se indicated by some of the models, and better shear. Taking a look at our wind gust models, because damaging wind gust is going to be another potentially big risk for storms today across this region. Is going to be probably around the same as the possibility for tornadoes, and probably going to drive the slight risk with the tornado risk. And again, should indicate that there may be a little bit more evaluation that may be needed with the newer SPC outlook that comes out around 3 p.m. EST. Wind gust models are indicating that we are expected to see some widespread damaging wind gusts with some isolated damaging wind gusts that may be a little bit stronger than others, potentially getting upwards of 50-40 mile per hour with 30 mile per hour wind gusts trailing behind across the northern Dixie states, northern Alabama, into middle and central Tennessee, and that's going to move into eastern Tennessee. So overall, it does look like we should see the best risk for damaging wind gusts, potentially more so into Tennessee, but we should also be able to see the possibility of some isolated to scattered damaging wind gusts that may extend further down into Alabama. Now that I've told you the weather, please go down to the description and check out the socials for Project Gladiator, and join the Discord for the updates on Project Gladiator. 2 other channels that I highly suggest you check out are One Nation Weather and Weather Watcher. If you do want to donate to Project Gladiator, the link to the GoFundMe is in the description. I do appreciate the donations. Notice anything might have been wrong in this forecast, or would like to make a suggestion or ask a question, please leave a comment. I do answer them, and hopefully I'll be able to see you guys on Sunday with the weekly overlook.